Again, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in the world. Welcome to our Global Read webinar series. My name is Felipe, and I am part of the Charter for Compassion staff. And I am so excited to welcome you to this session where we are going to be discussing the book Getting It, Then Getting Along. And this is by author Linda Reynolds and Andiric. And the facilitator for this conversation is our good friend Nancy Murphy, who is an incredible volunteer and part of Compassion at St. Augustine in Florida in the United States. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to put them on the comments section or in the Q&A. If you're watching this on our social media platforms, just add your questions to the comments, and I will make sure that we get all those questions asked at the end of the session. So with this, Nancy, Linda, thank you so much for joining us. I leave the room to you.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Felipe, and thank you to the Charter for the opportunity to share Linda's book and share this time with you so that we can all have some time to learn a little bit more about how we can get it and then get along. I am so grateful to be sitting in St. Augustine, Florida right now, which is where I first learned about the Charter for Compassion, read the charter and immediately affirmed it and became enamored of Karen Armstrong's work. And that has led me to dig deeply into compassion for the last 5 years. And it led me to my friend Linda and her book and the opportunity to sit here with Linda today. Now, Linda's traveled the world extensively, and she has a keen interest in different cultures, including religious beliefs that people practice. Educated as a scientist with many years of experience in the medical field, Linda has witnessed the importance of spirituality to people both in the United States and throughout the world. She currently lives in St. Augustine, and she has recently stopped working as a consultant in global health for the American Society for Clinical Pathology as a part of the PEPFAR project. So, Linda, thank you for accepting this invitation and allowing me to sit with you today and discuss your book a little bit. And if you would tell us how you came to write the book and how you came to get engaged with the compassionate movement, that would be helpful.
Okay. Well, as my bio says, I've always been interested in spirituality. And of course, Karen Armstrong has written extensively about religion and the different religions. She's got a number of books, and I read a lot of those books. And among them was the 12 Steps for Compassionate Life. And I loved it, and I went right online and signed the charter. So that's my background. It's been about probably 10, 12, 15 years now since I've signed the charter.
Oh, that's wonderful. And is that what led you to write the book, or what was it exactly that drove you to write it? What was your inspiration?
My inspiration was after 9/11, we had a period in the United States where there was a great deal of Islamophobia. And not only Islamophobia, but mistaken Islamophobia. It happened that quite a few, two individuals that were Sikhs of the Sikh religion, which is not even part of Islam. It's an offspring from Hinduism, were killed, just gunned down on the street. And then, of course, there was that center, a community center for Sikhs in Wisconsin, that it was a mass killing there. And I'm thinking, these are not even, it has nothing to do with 9/11. And then Sikhs, for those that are listening that don't know, are the offspring of the Hindu religion, that the men do not cut their hair, but they wear turbans. And they are the most patriotic, service-oriented people that you could imagine. They are, as a matter of fact, when I was in India, traveling in India, we went to a Sikh center that fed over 4,000 to 5,000 people a day, which was just tremendous. I mean, it was really a big operation. So they're very service oriented. They're also very patriotic and very thankful for anything that they've gained in this country. And I thought somebody's got to tell these people that they're killing the wrong, well, they're not killing the wrong, they shouldn't be killing at all, but that the Sikhs have nothing to do with 9/11.
Mhm.
Also, during I think it was the first Trump administration, we had a ban on travel for Muslims. They were not allowed to come into the country at all. And it just, I thought somebody's got to tell them. And myself being a person that's not a theologian or a philosopher, I thought I could put it in terms, layman terms, and reach out to people and explain what the religions were, how they evolved, how they were created, and how they've developed and how they're practicing today. So that basically was my inspiration. Of course, I read a great deal about it, but I also was fortunate enough to have advice from each one of the religions. And I the religions that I chose to write about were Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And of course, there's many, many more religions in the world, but those are the ones that are the majority by number of people that practice them. So I started with Judaism, and people ask me often why I started with Judaism, and I did put the Abrahamic religions first, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and then Hindu and Buddhism follows. That's the order in the book. Um, I looked at going to have advice. I read extensively about the religions, but I also wanted somebody that practiced it, and not only practiced it on a sort of a plebeian level, but somebody that was a leader in that religion. So for Judaism, we had a Chabad Orthodox Judaism come to St. Augustine about the time that I started writing this, and there was an advertisement in the St. Augustine record that there was going to be class. So I called the rabbi and asked if I could come. And from that, I established this relationship with him as such. And he was very, very helpful. He gave me his Talmud and his Torah, and we discussed things. And I went to Seder dinners, and he gave me a lot of information. And so that was kind of the Judaism part. Christianity is what I myself practice, so I was pretty knowledgeable about that. But also, my roommate in college became a Episcopalian priest. A friend of mine's husband was an Episcopalian priest. And I had another friend that was in another Protestant, that they all read what I wrote and said it was, it fit fine. Islam, I was kind of at a conundrum there. How am I going to do that? We did have, my ex-husband was Muslim, although a secular Muslim, rather unpracticing Muslim. So I didn't get much information there other than what I read. But my son at the time lived in Connecticut, and his neighborhood pulled out on the Merritt Highway for anybody that's familiar with Connecticut. And I'm sitting at the red light and I look across the street and it says New England Islamic Center. So I went there and met the imam, and he helped me. He read what I had written and said, this is right on here. This you need a little assistance with. You need to tidy this up a bit. So I did that. And he referred me to a Yale professor that actually helped me with some of the things with the Islam. Hindu and Buddhist. I've been very interested in Buddhism because and why that sparked my interest was that a lot of Jewish people, a lot of Jewish practitioners go over and actually practice Judaism. I mean,
Okay.
sorry, Buddhism. So that was interesting. And I found that Emory University has a Buddhist offset of the Draping Lusolin Monastery that was once in Tibet. It
Mm.
was destroyed by the Chinese. So they have a temple in Atlanta, and I called there and met. I actually went up there for 6 Saturdays and took their Buddhism 101 class. Um,
Mm.
but the person that worked with me on the Buddhist part of the book was a translator for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So, I don't think I had any better any better critiquer than that. And then the Buddha or the Hinduism, that kind of grew from that. I've been a yoga practitioner, physical yoga, the exercise. And then I began to read because of the yoga means yoking with God. So the
Mhm.
exercise part is just a small part of what yoga is supposed to be. And so I began reading a lot of the Hindu texts. And, strangely enough, in St. Augustine, I found that we had an ashram. And that ashram had a chaplain, he called himself, that was also a teacher, a professor at the school, the Emory School in Atlanta. And
Mhm.
so I met with him. He critiqued my writing of Hinduism. And incidentally, for if anybody is in the Atlanta area, there is a absolutely exquisite temple, Buddhist Hindu temple outside of Atlanta that has been brought over from India piece by piece and reassembled here. And it's just exquisite. It's just pristine and it's exquisite. So those were, I picked those 5 religions, and luckily enough, I came into my life 5 people that could really critique them and make sure that what I was saying was pretty accurate. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a person that has had extensive theology study, but and I thought that was probably a positive since I've been trying to convince people that are laymen like me uh, to get along.
Mhm. That's beautiful. When you spoke of the Sikhs, I learned about them when I took a world religions course, and I remember feeling their pacifism. And there was a Sikh who came and spoke with us. That was my first exposure to that.
Mhm.
And I also was raised Christian, cradle Catholic, as they call us. Very early on, I was fortunate enough to have a godmother, my mom's little sister, who introduced me to a wide array of literature because she's quite a bibliophile. And one of the first books I remember her giving me as a young adult was The Chosen by Hotak. And I couldn't wait to read the next books because that was my first exposure to a different faith tradition. Being raised Catholic, what I believed was Catholic with the small c, universal and all inclusive. So I'm really grateful for what you've put together in this book. I learned so much by reading these foundational beliefs that are held by the traditions. And as we know, Karen Armstrong identified that common bond of the golden rule in one form or another in every faith tradition and spiritual path. So I feel very grateful, especially in these times right now, to be able to embrace understanding, knowing better and more about what's separating us and how we can work toward keeping it from continuing to separate us. And on the Sikh side, also, I believe Valerie Kaur's uncle was one of the two Sikhs you referenced, and she's a friend of the charter, and she started the revolutionary love movement as a result of his murder. So
Yeah.
sometimes we take the lemons and we make the lemonade, and hopefully everyone is satisfied and better for that. So I'm really grateful to be here with you, and I wanted to ask you if you felt like there is a way to work through the fact that all of these world religions and faith traditions seem to have a tendency to claim to be the way.
Yes.
So how do we break that down? How do you see breaking that down, Linda?
Well, yes, they do seem to, and I think they are all the way. I think if certainly if I was born in Palestine or Saudi Arabia, I would be Islam. And I would think that's the way because that's my heritage, that's my culture, and that's what I believe in, and I think that's appropriate. And it's really amazing when you get into the depth of some of these religions that, first of all, they all believe in the golden rule. It's written right out. Be
Right.
kind to the foreigner because you were once foreigners too. Um, uh, you know, we're all on this path together. And I think the way depends upon the person that is seeking their own divine path. Um, in the Hindu, what I learned was timing is always interesting. And Abraham, who was the patriarch of the Abrahamic religions, the Jewish, the Christian, and the Islam, is in the time period where the Hindu eldest prophecies and scriptures were written, called the Rig. They were the Veda scriptures in that part of the world, and they were contemporaries almost. They lived the same period. So there was Abraham over here in Canaan, and the Veda prophets over in India, and they're contemporaries. And, it's interesting because although there's a different perspective on how to go along the way, the Vedas, I want to read something that came up. The Vedas there's a, a passage called the Rig Veda. Now, this is written during the Bronze Age or during Abraham's time. And it prophesizes a man, the firstborn of God, is all that was and all that is will to be. And he comes into the world to give recompense to everybody as part of his deeds. Now, who does that sound like?
I'm hearing Jesus.
Yeah. Um, and Jesus is never mentioned in the Hindu uh, anything that I've read. And, there so many of those records had been lost. And I believe so many of them are still being translated because, like the scrolls that were found in Israel, the Dead Sea, or not the Dead Sea Scrolls, the scrolls that were all rolled up and found in the cave that they're still translating, that were books of the Bible. I believe some of these old Vedic scriptures are also being transferred. But I think, that there's a God for all of us, and we all have our different ways of coming to God.
Mm-hmm. Many paths to one higher power, God,
Right,
Yahweh,
right,
Allah, whatever we call him,
right.
the ultimate being.
There's a beautiful, beautiful passage written by David Foley, who is an American who became a Hindu. And he says it is important to remember that above all delineations of identity, man is first and foremost a part of humanity. He goes on and says, the oneness of the ocean exists in its depths,
Mm.
not at all at the level of the waves, which must remain ever changing. So, isn't that thought-provoking?
Powerful.
Yes, very powerful.
Fathoms. Hard to fathom, but yes, indeed. I like the imagery there.
It's a
Wow.
good analogy, I think.
It's beautiful. So, Linda, you described what I would call divine interventions as you went along the path of discovery so that you could prepare yourself and then um, recognize where there were areas that needed to be improved or changed or enhanced in some way, perhaps as you were writing the book. So I'm wondering, in addition to having written the book, do you see more ways, and could you recommend them if you do, to learn about the other?
Yeah, well, you and I know about the compassionate women in St. Augustine and how we have been breaking bread together with both our Jewish friends and our Islamic friends. And we've just had wonderful times, and there's been no conflict or no discussion of politics or what's happening here or elsewhere in the world. And we're just simply being women together. So I see that not all of the audience is women, I realize that, but get together, get to know your neighbor. And there's so many ways that we can reach out to one another and do things together, especially now in a time when there's a great deal of anger on the streets. It's good to be with our neighbors and help to stand up for what we believe. Because I can assure you that it's not just the Christians or the Palestinians or the Jewish people that are in disagreement with some of the things that are happening today. If we could reach out together, and of course, there's always Karen's 12 steps, which in the book, I devote the whole first chapter to going over. I sort of paraphrase her 12 steps as to how you could do that in your own community. And I think it's really worthwhile. We talk about a lot I hear it during the Thanksgiving dinners, that you invite family members and they may have different opinions than you do, and it ends up rather than being a meal of Thanksgiving, it ends up as a kind of an argument. So I think, if you can get together with people, if you can reach out to people and have social times with them, and then ease into the discussion, just try to learn about them. If it gets heated, there's a method that I've used teaching when I taught. I did have the fortune of teaching in all over Africa, which, by the way, is almost entirely Muslim in sub-Sahara Africa. And when things get into a difficult discussion, you can back up and use what the Native Americans used, which I really loved, and I put into practice there a couple times because the tempers got flying a little bit about the right way to do things and the right way this person did things as opposed to another.
Right.
And they had what they called a talking stick. And
Mhm.
of course, it was had some feathers, and it was very Native American looking. But you can use anything as a talking stick. You can use a vase of flowers or a book and just pass it to the person. The idea is if you're getting into a discussion that seems to be getting out of hand, everybody's talking at once, everybody's talking over everyone else. You can establish this talking stick. You could do it with the cell phone, actually, as I'm thinking about it. the person that has the cell phone, one cell phone, not a cell phone, but one cell phone that you choose to be the talking cell phone, has the right to talk. They can finish their speech, they can say what they want. Nobody's to interrupt them. When they are finished, if somebody else wants to make a comment, the talking phone goes to them and they have their turn. So nobody's talking over one another. Maybe tempers flare a little bit, but you cut them a little slack. And I found that a very good way to lead a discussion that gets out of hand, that could easily get out of hand.
Oh, I love that concept. And I also love the concept of recognizing our common humanity and the deep listening component of the talking stick or the talking phone. Oh, I have it now. Um, um, as as a part of that communication with one another, as you know, Compassionate St. Augustine has a Purple Bench initiative, and the purple benches are placed around town, located in areas where we hope and witness people sharing time together, people with different cultures, different backgrounds, different opinions, whether they're political or otherwise. Um, and a key component to that seems to be deep listening,
Yes.
to be willing and able to absorb information that's unique to a culture or a person, and then consider that perspective, the value of those different perspectives to enhance our recognition and appreciation of our common humanity and each individual's uniqueness, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
So anyway, I feel that model is a pathway for us to break down some of those perceptions of barriers, because some of them may be real and some of them may just be in our own
Social
ignorance.
social media information, they may be.
Right, exactly. So one of the things that I noticed in your book that I wanted to bring up is from early in the book when you're talking about Judaism, and it reads, the importance for the perfection of character traits is for the settlement of a human's mind. And when this extends to others and to the community, ultimately the world will become stabilized.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
Let's do that. That's right. That's Maimonides' writing. He was I believe he was born in Morocco, but he was a physician and a philosopher, and he wrote extensively on Judaism. I'm trying to the period that he was. It was after the Inquisition. I'm not quite sure what date he was, but he codified actually uh, a lot of the Jewish texts. For example, there are 613 commandments that God gave Moses through the oral code. Some of them are positive, you shall do this, and some of them are negative, you shall not do this. So he codified those and put them in order. And his advice to people, as far as the settled mind, was for them to, let's see, was for them to not be extreme in either direction. In other words, don't give all your money away,
Mm.
but be give to people that need it. Don't keep it all. Don't be stingy. Find a happy medium of things that you give and things that you keep for yourself. The same with food. Don't eat everything in sight. Don't bow to to your tastes. Eat a good diet, but practice some, restraint. And everything he looked like that. And he said his thing was that if you um, if you live that kind of life where you're neither excess or you're in depriving yourself, then you will be a happy person. You will find happiness. And of course, that's what Buddhism is built on, the happiness thing too. You know, we all want, Buddhist and Hindu, we all want to be happy. That's foremost in our mind as human beings. We want to be happy. And you know, the Hindus particularly have nothing against people trying to achieve happiness because they will learn that the only thing that really is going to make them happy is their communion with God. But they need to go through all these stages. You need to test that all out. You just can't believe that somebody's going to tell you, well, you know, go straight to God. Don't, you know, don't bother with the rest of the stuff. They, you know, go ahead and do that. Learn from that and learn that it's not fulfilling, it's not as fulfilling as you think it's going to be.
Right, right. And fortunately, those 613 laws or commandments that you referenced were really broken down in the Roman Empire by Christ, who said two commandments, right?
Yeah,
Love God and love one another.
right, right.
So that foundational golden rule, one of the things I learned in your book, although as I said, I'm a cradle Catholic, was that in the early Christian church, the Greek philosophy evolved to a belief of the reality of an eternal spiritual immortality of the soul rather than merely a temporary material and physical existence.
Uh-huh.
And then it goes on to say that Christianity was in line with that concept, and the Romans of the time, who were an inclusive civilization with a sense of solidarity and unity of all mankind under their political organization, did not oppose the new Christian theology.
Mhm.
I didn't remember that part of Christian history if I ever learned it before. So I thought that was felt like a breakthrough, felt like an exciting piece of information that you shared with us. Can you speak to that a little bit, Linda?
Well, I think we all have breakthroughs constantly. I think that it is. And, you know, speaking of humanity and God, um, I think you know, God is, well, I'm going to quote again from my book because I didn't make this up, but I think it's expressed beautifully here. God is beyond comprehension and unknowable by ordinary human minds. Beyond space, time, and cause, God is transcendent, eternal, and changeless. So believed the sages of the Indo-Aryan forefathers. This God is the creator of the universe and is ruler over all peoples. This supreme one became known as the Brahman, the eternal existence, the absolute knowledge, and the infinite bliss. So I think it's, you know, it's beyond us as human beings. And again, you know, human beings, essentially, one realizes that the body is one of many layers, a jacket of covering that surrounds the human personality and the true inner self. Even the thing we call the mind, the senses, the emotions, the intellect are separate entities from the reality that is the self. When the process of the mind are left behind and cease, one experiences peace at the threshold of pure being, even though that one who experiences it may still have a personal identity.
Mm,
So
that's beautiful.
there is a concept that we as individuals are, and I believe this goes back to Hinduism, which of course from Hinduism, Buddhism evolved, but that Brahman is the creator, the Godhead, and sort of like sparks or pieces of the holy, the Godhead, came out, and that is us human beings. We are called in the Hindu religion Atman. In other words, those are part of the holy, part of the Most High, and we experience this world, and our job finally is we want to come back and be reunited with the Creator.
Mm.
That's a beautiful, beautiful thought too.
Yes, yes, it really is. I want to ask you a couple of questions about the Islam tradition.
Mhm.
As I was absorbing the information you were sharing, that was the most challenging for me to understand. Many different terms, Shia, Shiite, um, you know.
Yeah.
I won't go on, but if you could just speak a little bit to the reasons that there are different terms that are used, and maybe a
Yeah.
couple clarifying points on that, Linda.
Yeah. Well, Muhammad, of course, is the prophet that received the Quran from God. And Muhammad was he couldn't read or write,
Mm.
and evidently the story goes that he went to this cave, and God gave him in Arabic, it's very evidently very poetic. And he gave him a few verses at a time, and he memorized them there and then took them back to somebody to write them down. He himself didn't write them down. And of course, it must have taken a very long time because the Quran is not a short book. Um, he was a miraculous, a, a profound human being, obviously, being uneducated, but still having a sense of wonderful judgment, and people respected him. And, he was just a profound prophet of God. When he died, there was a sort of a conflict about who's going to be his successor, because during his lifetime everybody paid attention to him, and he would, it was almost like a judge. People would come to him and he would give them advice or judgment. So when he died, he did have, he did have one daughter, and there were two thoughts that uh, it should be a familial relative of his that would take over. So there were people that thought it would be his, he had a nephew at that time called Ali, and they were rooting for Ali. And
Mm.
the conclave that was the conclave is not is a Catholic thing for choosing the Pope, but it was a similar thing for choosing his successor, and I'm not coming up with the term right now. They picked his cohort, or a person that was with him very closely, named Abu Bakr, Abu Bakr. And so he became the next, took over for Muhammad. And there were people that were very disturbed about that. They wanted it to be a direct relative of Muhammad. So that's where the split became. And those that did not protest so much became the Sunni is Islam, Muslims, and those that really thought that the successor from Muhammad should be a relative, a direct relative of us, became the Shiites. And of course, they've had conflicts between them as well.
Ever since, right?
Yeah, ever since.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how that happened. Um,
And then there's some more splinters that came off from there, right?
there's what? I'm sorry.
Other splinters that came off from there, right? Factions, if you will.
Yeah, well, there's a very, very orthodox way of practicing Islam in Saudi Arabia called Wahhabism, and it goes strictly by the Quran. It's Shiite law, strictly by the Quran. The Sunni, and the Shiites are pretty directed by the Quran as well. The Sunnis are more kind of like it's kind of like our Constitution. There are constitutionalists that think that the Constitution should be followed as it was written in 1776, and there are others that thinks that it evolves with time. So
Mm.
that's how I see the two branches. Incidentally, there is one country. Jordan is the country that the King Abdullah and his father before him are direct descendants from Muhammad. And they're called Hashawat. It's a Hashawat country, although they practice Sunni Islamism. So,
Interesting. I'm
in,
reminded why I was confused.
yeah, it's very confusing. It's very confusing.
Well, it's also really interesting to me, and I feel compelled to learn a little bit more. And am reminded in your Hinduism chapter, uh, you wrote that the one truth declares that the ultimate destiny of all individuals is to aspire to and search for a higher awareness of universal principles by the elimination of ignorance.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Only if we could.
Education is key,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
right? And
Reaching out. And um, there's a Jewish scholar who's passed away some time ago. His name is Jonathan Sachs. And he made the comparison of biodiversity and how the animal and the flora and the fauna, we're all different, but together, they do wonderful things. We have a wonderful world. And his thing was that, if we could use each other and our differences and come together, because there's different mindsets and different cultures, and um, incidentally, you can't translate things that were written by the Vedics and in Hindu and in Jewish. It loses something in the translation, and
mm,
I don't know if I'm saying that clear enough, but I know that the Narwhal people, they have like 30 some words for the word snow. And
mm,
English, we have one or two, maybe sleet and snow, and I don't know, maybe, but
flurries.
flurries, maybe. But there's this thing called Orientalism, and you cannot get in the mind of somebody that's in a completely different culture exactly as they see that culture or they see the world, because we are different.
Mm,
And his Jonathan Sachs thing was that he said, if we can use all these good things from all these different mindsets, we might be able to solve some of the biggest problems in the world, being that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
I love that.
I love that too. I love that too.
Yes. Yes. And love is another word that we use, and it has in some languages, I, I don't know, dozens of different words for
Mhm.
to mean love, the different types of love. So
Yes.
I love that concept that you just shared with us.
Yeah.
And that takes me to the final section on the fifth um, faith tradition, Buddhism, spiritual path. And I was interested to read the five paths to achieve nirvana and enlightenment, because this seems very linked with what we just talked about, which is eliminating ignorance. And the path to that is learning, right?
Right.
So the five paths you have lifted are accumulation, preparation, seeing or insight, meditation, and then the fifth one, no more learning.
You're there.
I'm, I'm
That's
not
all it,
there.
that's all it takes. It just says four things and you're there.
Piece of cake.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just do that with our last few minutes that we have today.
Um, yeah. Well, the Buddhists don't consider themselves a religion. They consider themselves more of a philosophy than a religion. And it's interesting. Another interesting fact is, when uh, Moses was given the laws by God on the Mount Sinai,
Hmm.
and when Jesus was ascended during the ascension, when he left the world for good, the Buddha Shakyamuni, who considers himself a teacher, as did Jesus, he was a rabbi, a
Rabbi,
teacher.
right.
Yeah, considers him the Buddha Shakyamuni says, I'm not a holy person. I'm a teacher. But
Hmm.
he, all three of them, when they reached God, so to speak, they all had a shiny countenance reported. Moses, when he came down from the mountain, was glowing. Jesus, when he ascended into heaven, was glowing. And the Buddha, when he reached Nirvana,
Nirvana.
was glowing. So,
Wow.
three of them made it anyway.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
I
it is
like.
really beautiful. But yeah, the Buddhists they do it through meditation. And I was lucky enough to be in India at the Buddhist colony there. And they are just beautiful people, just peaceful,
Mhm.
giving people. Um,
Mhm.
and I wanted to read, I don't know how far we are in here, but I wanted to read something from the Quran because I think this will resolve a lot of um, questions. Um, this is Surah. Surah is like a verse in the Christian Bible. Surah, the fifth surah, the 48th uh, part of that surah. And it says, "To you we sent the scripture in truth." Okay, this is to Muhammad. And so confirming the scriptures, both Jewish and Christian. Okay, this is in the Quran, the Islam Quran. So they're
Mhm.
confirming the Jewish and the Christian scriptures that came before. Now, remember, Muhammad was in 576, I believe, or 567, and guarding it in all safety. So judge between them by what God has revealed, and do not follow vain desires, diverging from the truth that will come to you. To each of you, we have prescribed a law and an open way to find God. If God had so willed it, not wilted, but willed it, he would have made you one people with one religion. But his plan is to test you in what he has given you. So strive as in a race in all virtues. The goal for you all is to God. It is he that will show you the truth of the matters in which you dispute. So to me, that says, go your way. I have given you each a way to go, and you will find me.
Mhm. Mhm.
But that's a Quran. That's directly from the Quran.
Wow. Wow. That's beautiful. And
And
directly, oh, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I think most people don't even realize that Islam is an Abrahamic religion. It derived from Ishmael, which was the son that Abraham had with his maidservant Hagar when
Hmm.
he and Sarah thought they were too old to have an offspring. And then later they had Isaac as their own son, and Ishmael was then sent away.
Right. A cast off.
A
And
cast.
so it's really heartening
But
to.
God said to
Mm.
Abraham, let him go. And he said to Ishmael, you will be the father of many nations. And Ishmael is the father of many nations. Actually, Muslim and Islam and Christianity are Christianity is still ahead. I think there's 23 billion and something like 20 billion Muslims. So, they're neck and neck. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
but go your way. I've, I find great comfort in that.
I really like that, and I appreciate that the call to going addresses something about the ego, because it harkens me to recall Karen Armstrong's and all the others who crafted the Charter for Compassion, which begins with the principle of compassion, right? Uh,
Right.
it's rooted in all of these faith traditions, and it calls us to remove ourselves from the center of our universe and to put another there. And I think that might be one of the challenges that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Well,
keeping us from being and recognizing and appreciating our common humanity.
yeah. And I think it's worthwhile to look at the word compassion even and realize that compassion doesn't mean feeling sorry for somebody. It means imagining walking in their shoes and imagining yourself being in their situation and how how you can help them if they're in a negative situation, or what you can do, what you can do to help them, or what they can do to help themselves. Compassion is not sorrow or not feeling sorry,
No,
but walking in
right,
somebody else's moccasins.
right. To take another line from the last paragraph of the Charter for Compassion, compassion impels us to work tirelessly to relieve the suffering of others,
Right.
right? And
And the Buddhists, a lot of them, the Dalai Lama, for example, they call themselves bodhisattvas when they're learning and they're going on. But many of them have reached the ultimate goal, but because of their compassion for those of us that are still struggling to see the way and to help ourselves, they've they've not remained there, but come back to help us,
mm,
come back to have compassion on us and try to show us the way, whichever way we choose to make. I have no problem with Jewish men becoming Buddhists. I have, if that makes sense to you, if that's the way that you see yourself going forward, then that go for it.
right, I agree. And another line from the Charter that moves me every time I think about it, and I think is relevant to mention here, is that we urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we are interdependent.
we are. And it's very troublesome at this particular moment in time in our country. It's I hope we can get beyond this.
We got to keep believing, right?
Yeah, we do.
And Linda, we have just a couple minutes left. Is there any excerpt you'd like to read from your book?
Yeah, I would. Um, I have the end of the first chapter. His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 1998 teaches that having those in our lives with whom we disagree and dislike provides us an opportunity to practice loving kindness and respect, not to adopt the enemy's viewpoint or practices, but to understand them better and to perhaps be a factor in providing information that will dispel harmful behavior on their part.
Mm,
Such was the case with Malcolm X. Initially, now the Dalai Lama didn't say that. This is my comment to that. The Malcolm X, who initially had no tolerance for whites and called for their demise until he had a completely different experience at a Muslim Hajj, where white pilgrims accepted him and treated him as an equal, unlike his experience in the United States. He returned from the Hajj with the realization that through education, instead of advocating for destruction of whites, racial prejudice in the US could be lessened by the elimination of ignorance and perhaps someday eradicated. Mahatma Gandhi, who's the Indian Hindu, advocated that as individuals, we ourselves must become the change we want to see in the world. And it doesn't come from bullying others. That is, in essence, what I hope to invoke and provide for the reader of this book.
Mm. Mm.
Another short, just one sentence uh, quote from Ernest Hemingway. And, Ernest Hemingway, I've heard, I didn't know the man, but I've heard that he could spend 2 hours trying to make one sentence. And I think this is an example of a perfect sentence. So I'll read this as my closing thing, closing little readout here. Um, there is nothing, wait a minute. I'm on the wrong page, sorry.
It's all right. I've been on the wrong page a time or two, Linda.
I know. From the Whom the Bells Toll. Today is the only one day in all the days that will ever be. But what will happen in the other days that will come are dependent on today.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's really a point to ponder, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes.
So everything we do, 8 hours, 24 hours a day, is like the butterfly wing.
Yes, it's making wind in the wind passes, right? Moving the air.
Right.
Absolutely. Someone told me recently that we need to be present for each sip of tea because although we may have had much tea before, we've never had that sip.
That's right. And the river that flows by, that water is never going to be there again.
Pocahontas taught me that.
Actually, when you first start to do meditation in the Buddhist thing, they have you eat one raisin, and you're supposed to eat that raisin with true consciousness. Pay attention to that raisin. And it's kind of an amazing little experiment because, you think you know what a raisin tastes like, but until you really focus on eating that raisin, it's kind of a surprise.
That's interesting. I'm not a big fan of raisins. Could we do it with raspberries too?
You could.
Okay. Thank you so much, Linda.
It's my honor.
It's been wonderful.
And thank you both, Nancy and Linda, for spending this time talking about the book and also everything that comes with information from the book and the five religions that you mentioned. I think it's worthy to mention, and you mentioned it plenty at the beginning, you're not a theologian. You have much curiosity and you went to people that knew more, and I think that's something so admirable and something to follow for everyone that is watching this either now live or recording, is that we can all learn from this and we can all we can find resources everywhere, and I think your book is one of those resources that has been added now to that extensive library, which is amazing. And it's so important for people to realize that you don't need to study in college a religion to, learn more about it. And at the same time, you can see that there is different kinds of tea all around the world, but the water that is, the water that you need for each tea is the same, no matter where you are. So
Mm.
thank you so much for this time. I really, really appreciate it. Let me just share with everyone really quick a couple of the things that are happening with the Charter for Compassion. So first of all, tomorrow, 9 to 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, we have TLC training for local bridge builders. This is going to be with our executive director, Marilyn Turkovich. Uh, this is going to be a great training for people and is part of the programming for 40 Days of Peace, inspired in the legacy of Martin Luther King. We also have the EdNet Forum next week on February 19th at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time as well. Championing Thriving You Deserve with Craig Aarons Martin, the CEO of CCM Education Group. And you can check out the information on our calendar. Oh, let me actually put right now in the chat the link for you to access all the future events. We have we continue with our Global Music Harmony of Humanity webinar series where we see how humanity, even though different in different areas of the world, geographically speaking, it all and times too and cultures, it can all be weaved together through music. And it's a really, really cool webinar that again our executive director does. This is every Wednesday until July through July, at 8 a.m. Pacific time every Wednesday. Let me see what else we have here. The Sangha, the Charter Sangha, is our monthly gathering, virtual gathering where people can join us. This time is going to be is the last Saturday of the month every year, every month, and this time is going to be Saturday, February 28th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It's a time for peace, for sharing, for mindfulness, for even for quiet moments. And you get to share this time with people from all around the world, and it's a really good opportunity to, tune in once again with yourself and improve your compassion and self-compassion. Our next global read is on March 25th, and this is with author Reverend Margaret Somerville from Interfaith Alignment. And the facilitator is going to be our friend, charter board member, Imam Jamal Rahman. So that's going to be a really fun new global read that's happening next month. And then we have the Thrive Conference, March 4th and 5th, United for Democracy and Global Action. This is a conference that it's talking mostly about politics and the role of compassion and education through, and democracy. So very, very important topic to discuss about right now if you really think about it. So everyone's invited to join that. And again, you can follow all that stuff in our on our link that I posted on the chat. For everybody else, if you are a podcast listener, we do have a podcast out. The Charter for Compassion is sponsored now. It's called With Compassion. And our host, Jennifer Nadel, she is an incredible journalist in the UK. She also started Compassion in Politics, which is an incredible organization that, again, deals with simple as the name does, right? Compassion in Politics. And last but not least, we also are always providing information about the Spirit of Ubuntu, a documentary that Charter for Compassion was a sponsor of. It's an award-winning documentary talking about the term Ubuntu, which is I am because we are, directly coming from indigenous cultures in Africa, specifically in South Africa. So, with that, my friends, I wanted to once again thank you, Linda, Nancy, and everybody that joined us. And we'll be seeing you in our next Global Read in March. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Felipe.
Yeah,
Thanks, Linda.
thank you, thank you.
Bye for now.